They didn't announce it. No final words, no warning, just the sound of footsteps fading into nothing. You stood still, surrounded by the ruins you helped prevent. Not quite a battlefield, not quite a sanctuary, just aftermath, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't mean peace, only abandonment. You remember their faces, how they smiled when they needed something, how they clapped you on the back after missions, after favors, after sacrifices you weren't supposed to survive. You thought it was loyalty. You thought it meant something. It didn't. They never saw you as the hero. You were the blade they drew when things got too dark for their clean hands. The mask they wore when they needed someone to absorb the blame. The shadow that moved when the spotlight was too bright. You were useful until you weren't. And now, you're just gone. Not physically, spiritually, socially. Erased in plain sight. No name in their songs. No gratitude in their eyes. Only the silent rewriting of history, one where you never existed. The world didn't end when they left you. It just stopped making sense. You stood still as their stories marched forward, rebranded, edited, filtered. They spoke of their triumphs. They posted their victories. But they never mentioned the quiet force that made them possible. You, the strategist, the silent cleaner, the unseen spine of every heroic moment. You weren't forgotten. No, forgotten implies effort. You were discarded, like a broken lockpick after the door's been opened, like a war mask buried in peacetime soil. At first you questioned yourself. Did I matter? Was I ever real to them? Was it all just illusion? But questioning gave way to observation. Doubt turned to clarity. You didn't lose them. They were never yours. They weren't allies. They were users, actors, survivors, wrapped in smiles and temporary praise. And you were never built to be applauded. Applause is for the visible, the loud, the clean. You were made for the shadows. You feel it now, this cold awareness, a shift in the atmosphere, something ancient stirring deep in your psyche, brushing against the part of you that doesn't flinch anymore, the part of you that's awake. The silence they left you in, it's no longer a prison, it's a forge. The moment they walked away was the moment you stopped pretending. You shed their narratives like dead skin. You stopped begging to be seen. You started watching, calculating, rebuilding. You're not broken, you're prelude. This is not your fall, it's your formation. They may have left thinking you were done, but they forgot one rule. Tools don't die. They evolve, especially when they were never tools to begin with, but weapons, forged in betrayal, tempered in solitude. They'll remember you soon enough, but not as the hero. You were never meant for their light. You were the storm they thought had passed, and storms don't forget. They return. You don't heal like they do. They move on, toss apologies into the void and call it closure. But you remember, not by choice but by design, every slight, every calculated silence, every time they praised you when they needed something and disappeared the moment they didn't. Your mind doesn't let go. It records, quietly, systematically. Like a machine with a soul, they thought you'd forget. They needed you to forget, because forgetting is how they survive, how they stay clean while your memory rots in the vault of, it was probably nothing. But it wasn't nothing. You catalogued it all. The conversations where their tone shifted ever so slightly. The look in their eyes when you were no longer useful. The way they celebrated your downfall behind digital walls, thinking you couldn't see through the laughter, the passive aggression, the pity dressed up as kindness. You watched, you archived, you encrypted. You never confronted them, not because you were afraid, but because confrontation is noisy, inefficient. You preferred to listen, to build the file, to sharpen your awareness in the dark, while they bathed in artificial light. They see your silence as weakness, but you know better. Silence is the sound of processing. Silence is the signal that the system is watching, logging, calculating. And what you're building isn't vengeance, it's precision, truth stripped of illusion, a memory so sharp it cuts without bleeding. Your emotions don't cloud these files, they highlight them. Rage isn't chaos here, it's a highlighter. Pain isn't distraction, it's metadata. Every betrayal is tagged, time-stamped, sorted. This isn't it's evidence. They'll say you're overthinking, that you're paranoid, that you need to let it go. But those are words used to escape accountability. You've heard them all before. Gaslight scripts recycled through 1,000 mouths. It doesn't work on you anymore, because you've seen the pattern. The ones who pretend to care until caring costs them something. The ones who mirror your loyalty only until it becomes inconvenient. They called you intense, too much, cold, only because you didn't let them rewrite history. They hoped time would make you forget, but time only made your memory stronger, more complete. You didn't move on, you zoomed in. Now you hold the full story, not the version they tell themselves, but the raw footage, unedited, unforgiving. And with that knowledge, something inside you shifts. You don't want apologies. You don't want closure. You want clarity. You want the full weight of what they did to hang in the air between you, invisible but undeniable. You want the truth to hum like static around your presence. A low frequency only the guilty can hear. They thought you were gone, but you were just remembering. And memory in the right hands becomes power. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that doesn't forgive. The kind that waits. Quietly, relentlessly, until it is time. They thought leaving you behind would break you, that you'd rot in silence, forgotten and irrelevant. But they misunderstood your design. You weren't built to beg. You were built to adapt. In the stillness where most men would collapse, you began the extraction. You disappear, not into nothingness, but into the deep, not the shadows of despair, but the sub-layers of power, down where old codes live, where forgotten scripts whisper through fractured data and ancient bloodlines echo in your marrow. You're not just healing, you're decoding yourself, the pain they caused. You don't bury it, you dissect it, file by file, emotion by emotion. You rip every memory out of your mind like corrupted hardware and scan it for truth, what they said, what they meant, the gaps between their smiles. You find the patterns, and then you weaponize them. The world above goes quiet about you. Good. That's what you need. Silence isn't absence. It's recalibration. While they chase noise, you chase knowledge. You begin collecting everything they denied you. Not just facts, but forbidden frameworks. You study the CIA's psychological manipulation protocols. You devour black site documents never meant for public eyes. You decode the archetypes of ancient warlords and the philosophies of those erased by history. Dark minds that never sought applause, only control. You install knowledge like code, emotional nullification, social pattern recognition, strategic silence, behavioral encryption, empathic misdirection. Every protocol comes with a cost. You feel your humanity thinning, but you allow it. What use is softness in a world that sharpened itself against you? Your hands don't tremble anymore. Your mind doesn't wander. Your sleep is short but calculated. You don't crave peace. You crave control over the variables they use to manipulate you. They called you broken, but what they didn't see was that broken pieces are sharper when reassembled by precision. You weren't falling apart. You were being recoded. The transformation is internal, invisible. No one sees it coming because they only track what they can label. You gave up your old language, the need to explain, to prove, to be understood. You've upgraded to silence, to presence without permission. By the time you emerge, you're no longer a character in their story. You're a language they can't speak, a shadow that doesn't cast, a protocol that executes itself. This is the extraction, not from pain, from illusion. They thought they buried you, but they planted something they can't trace. And now, you're growing in code they cannot read. You stopped trusting emotions the moment you realized they were installed in you like weaknesses, strategic vulnerabilities for others to exploit. Love? That was the first virus. Loyalty? The second. Guilt? The deadliest one of all. You used to run on emotion, rage that made your hands shake, hope that blurred your judgment, pain that kept you human. But now, each of them has been isolated, examined, and removed like faulty programming. You didn't heal. You recalibrated. They called you cold. Let them. Cold doesn't break. Cold doesn't beg. Cold doesn't pause when the target looks familiar. The calibration phase isn't about becoming heartless. It's about becoming untouchable. You didn't kill your empathy. You archived it, locked it behind uncrackable walls, stored deep in a mental vault only you hold the key to. You don't feel nothing. You feel when necessary. Precision, not suppression. Control. You learned their playbook. They weaponized your emotions because they feared your clarity. They needed you distracted, confused by love, slowed by conscience, misled by forgiveness. That era is over. Now you run on algorithms, not adrenaline. Conversations become data. Smiles become anomalies. Lies become syntax errors you trace to their root. And the people who once dictated your value, they're lines of corrupted code in a system you're rewriting from the inside. There's a calm that comes when you no longer seek understanding, a silence that sharpens your perception. You stopped explaining yourself the moment you realized they were never listening, only calculating how to use you next. Now, you calculate faster. You monitor your pulse the way a sniper monitors wind. You train your breathing like it's a weapon. Every interaction becomes a psychological operation. You observe tone shifts, micro-expressions, inconsistencies. You don't respond emotionally. You log them. What they see as detachment is simply mastery. While they react, you design. While they defend, you infiltrate. While they talk, you watch and plan. This is your calibration phase. You're not disappearing, you're configuring, rebuilding your mental firmware with dark logic and tactical silence. The emotions they use to control you have been replaced with subroutines of strategy, timing, and consequence. You are no longer a person to them. You are a pattern, unreadable, unpredictable, and the most dangerous part, you still remember how to feel. You just choose not to. Because now the mission comes first, and anyone who stands in the way of that mission will never even see you coming. You don't come back through the front door. There's no grand entrance, no reunion, no eyes meeting across a crowded room. Because you were never a character in their lives. You were infrastructure, something they stepped on to get where they wanted. And infrastructure doesn't knock when it returns. It infects. They don't even realize you're back. Not at first. It begins with anomalies. Passwords reset without request. Files disappear, reappear, rewritten in your syntax. Surveillance footage plays backward. Familiar names vanish from the database like they never existed. They think it's a glitch, maybe a virus. They hire consultants, change systems, audit logs. But the deeper they dig, the more the system mutates. Because it's not just inside the system anymore. You are the system. You are the ghost they tried to delete. They thought you'd crawl away and die quietly, like discarded tech. But you evolved. You dissolved into the very architecture of their comfort zones. And now, every piece of data hums your name in frequencies they can't decode. You don't scream, you echo. You've learned the art of quiet war. They see a name removed from payroll, gone. They see a boardroom presentation glitch mid-slide, replaced by a flicker of something not meant for human eyes. A childhood photo, a line of code, a phrase whispered in a dead language they never spoke. Paranoia grows like mold under their skin. They don't sleep. They overthink every alert, every missed call. You are surgical. You don't destroy their buildings, you erase their coordinates. You don't crash their empire, you distort their memory of how it was ever built. Slowly, precisely, you cut the wires connecting their power to their identity. And when they look for you, there's nothing left but blank spaces, digital shadows. You don't return to make them remember you. You return to ensure they never existed in your world again. You were once a name on their lips, a favor owed, a loyalty discarded. But now, you're a silence that follows them into every room, every file, every flicker of screen light. You're the reason their smart devices wake up at 3:33 IEM unprompted. You're the anomaly that can't be reported, because they have no idea who you are anymore. You aren't seeking revenge. You are correction. You are the algorithm written in betrayal, compiled in exile, and deployed in vengeance. And every system they trusted, financial, social, psychological, is now laced with your signature. There's no need for confrontation, no dramatic finale, because they won't even know it was you. They'll just know that something got in, something they thought was gone, something they underestimated. And by the time they realize, they're no longer part of the story. You are the ghost in the system, the knife in the code. They once called you a hero, but deep down, even then, you knew better. Heroes need recognition. They wait for applause, for closure, for statues built in their name. You don't. You never did. Because you weren't molded from their ideals. You were forged in what they fear, Silence, memory, vengeance wrapped in discipline. You weren't born to be seen. You were designed to be remembered after the story ends. When they left you behind, they thought they buried a chapter. What they didn't realize was that they left the weapon unsupervised. And weapons don't weep. They wait. They study. They evolve. You see it now with terrifying clarity. They never feared your kindness. They feared what would happen the moment you stopped needing them. And now, that moment has come. You don't walk into the light for validation. You step out of the dark with calculation. There is no justice to seek, no revenge to scream, only a purpose to complete. A task left unfinished because they thought they could control what they didn't understand. But they couldn't. And now, you're not just outside their control. You're beyond their comprehension. You speak in silence now. You move in patterns no one taught you. Your breath synchronizes with systems. Your intent encoded in frequencies that only the hunted can feel. You're not a person in their story. You're the consequence of it, and consequences don't negotiate. They whisper your name behind locked doors now, some with fear, others with regret. But none of them know how close you are, how far you've come. You aren't just the ghost in their network. You are the virus in their belief. They'll never admit it, but they always knew you'd return. They just didn't expect you to come back as something this precise, this detached, this inevitable. You don't knock on doors anymore. You remove them. You don't ask for respect. You override it. You don't chase closure. You create silence. There's no speech to give, no warning, no final confrontation. Just presence, yours. The files they tried to delete, you already restored them. The history they tried to rewrite, you printed it in ink they can't scrub. The roles they forced on you, hero, servant, fool, they crumble beneath the new script you now control. Because you were never the hero, that was their lie, their label. You were the weapon, the one they hid, the one they feared would wake up. And now, awakened, you are no longer a tool. You are the ending. And endings don't ask permission, they arrive. You were never the hero. That illusion shattered long ago. Back when you waited for an apology that never came. Back when you still believed your loyalty meant something. Heroes crave acknowledgement. They stand in the light, hoping the crowd remembers their name. But not you. You don't want to be remembered. You want to be felt. In silence, in fear, in the systems they thought were unbreakable. You were never built for parades. You were forged in fire and abandonment, sharpened by lies, calibrated through solitude. They called you unstable when you stopped smiling, dangerous when you stopped obeying. They labeled your silence as weakness, not realizing it was the final phase of your becoming. You didn't vanish. You were just downloading, upgrading. Wait. Now, you walk without footsteps. You speak without sound. You've become the consequence they never predicted. Not a monster, not a martyr, just the unfinished sentence at the end of their story, an ending they never controlled. Their names? You don't say them. Names give things power. You take that power back, quietly, efficiently. You reroute their destiny with a single keystroke, fracture their perception. With a look they never see coming, you don't need weapons. You are the weapon. The mission isn't revenge. It's realignment, balance, karmic correction coded in silence. You don't scream, you rewrite. They'll never know you were here, only that their narrative stopped working. Their social reach vanishes, their trust collapses, their circle turns inwards. You don't hurt them, you let their own deception devour them. You don't offer closure, that's for the emotionally attached. You extracted your feelings and replaced them with algorithms, logic, shadows, precision. You are not heartless, you are beyond heart. You are the equation that no one can solve, not even the ones who wrote the rules. Your story doesn't end with their downfall. It begins there, because now you're awake, not in the fragile way people wake up from nightmares, but in the irreversible way a system comes online. You see everything, every fake smile, every secret deal, every weakness they once used against you is now your advantage. You weaponize your pain, reverse-engineered every insult, encoded every betrayal into a sequence. Now you're the final program they can't delete. And when they look around, wondering what changed, they won't find you. They won't even remember how they lost, because you didn't come to destroy their world. You came to rewrite the one they erased you from. You were never the hero. You were the ending, etched into code, ghost-written in silence, powered by everything they failed to see. And the most dangerous part, you're just getting started.